Yeah, definitely. It's a very big thing to break the law. I mean, political parties don't, lightly overspend because they know that they cannot break the law, and to do so would be seen to be terrible in the public's eyes, quite rightly so. Vote Leave had no such compunction, and we know, of course, I'm afraid they didn't tell the truth about funding for the NHS in terms of the money that they said we were spending with the EU, which wasn't true. They also said that Turkey was about to join the EU and millions of Muslim Turks were about to arrive. We know that to be untrue, and now we know they broke the law. It's actually incredibly serious, and it's absolutely right that government figures should say that, call them out, and people who have worked or work in Number 10, who were part of that campaign, also have to be held account, because breaking the law in Britain is a very, very serious offence.
The Chequers proposal, we mentioned there that faced quite a few challenges in terms of amendments yesterday that may or may not be viewed as contradictory to some of the proposals laid out by Prime Minister Theresa May. Do you think that proposal, the Chequers proposal as it were, is as dead as some Conservative MPs suggest it is?
Well, look, it's taken 2 years of arguing amongst ourselves before we've actually had a semblance of a proposal to put to the European Union. And once we've had this proposal ready to put to the European Union, it's been held, under the water by some of these extreme Brexiteers. Obviously, her version of the customs union can only work in one way, which she says in the original document that she put out, which is obviously that Britain collects the tariffs and gives it to the EU. We know perfectly well it won't work the other way round, and that's why the Brexiteers, the extreme Brexiteers, insisted on that to obviously kill this deal. Now, they've accepted it, which is obviously a sign of weakness, but I don't see how the European Union, if they were ever going to actually work through the first proposal, are going to be able to take on board this new one with these amendments which are designed to make it unworkable.
For viewers across Europe watching this, the intricacies of British politics, perhaps not that interesting, if I can be frank. What I want to understand, though, is do you think that these internal divisions in the Conservative Party make all the negotiations with the European Union long-term unreasonable? Because in the sense they're trying to come up with ideas that Brussels is never going to accept, the EU27 is never going to accept, like the one you just mentioned there. I mean, is that not a massive challenge?
No, that's true. I mean, now we know just how hard this is, okay? During the referendum campaign, we were told by people like Rees-Mogg it would be easy. It would be we'd get a trade deal very quickly. It took 2 years before we were ready to actually know what we wanted from the European Union. There was that famous meeting in Davos between Merkel and May, in which Merkel said, well, what do you want? And May said, no, what will you give us? And to take 2 years, having triggered Article 50 early, which we shouldn't have ever done, is just complete madness. And I think what it shows you is the division within the cabinet, within the country, within the government. And the only way, really, you can reconcile all of that is now to have a people's vote on whatever this final deal is going to be.
You talk about that, and a lot of people have talked about a second referendum. Is that a net positive or a net negative, do you think, both politically and economically?
Well, I think it's ultimately the only way you get through this logjam. Because if you look at the arithmetic, as you were quite rightly saying earlier on, it looks impossible for a deal to get through Parliament, given where the numbers are. And if that's the case, then one of the very few options available to the Prime Minister
is to try and get a different mandate.
Is to say, look, there are all these facts that have come to light over the last 2 years that we had no idea about. And not least the one that you said about Vote Leave having cheated. We've now got to put this back to the people in light of these new facts, let them decide, and ultimately do what they want. And if they want to stay in the EU, we stay in the EU. And if they want to accept whatever deal it is that's cobbled together, then they accept that. But ultimately, it's got to be put back to the people.
You're essentially saying that there's no Brexit proposal you think that can command a majority of members of Parliament here in London. Theresa May very narrowly won this vote last night. A couple of people weren't in the chamber. That helped her arithmetically by 3 votes, I think it was. We've had more junior ministers resigning because they wanted to vote against the government. She's been hemorrhaging cabinet ministers, including, I should add, for full disclosure, your sister, who was Home Secretary. Do you see any way that she can continue, as leader, to thread this very, very narrow needle and try and get this through without a referendum?
Well, obviously one has sympathy with the scale of the task in front of her. that it was never going to be easy, but that the arithmetic doesn't seem to be on her side. And she put forward a proposal, through ultimately trying to do what's right, and one must accept that has already been torpedoed by the hard Brexiters last night. And having been torpedoed, it now looks impossible that any semblance of that Chequers deal is going to get through the House. And if that's the case, the easiest thing for her and for her government is to say, let the people decide going forward. Because ultimately, we do know that we've had all these new facts that have come to light over the last few years, and it would only be fair, and there's a vast majority of people want to have the say on the final deal. This is different from just having a rerun of what happened 2 years ago. This is because we now know things that we didn't know 2 years ago, and that's why people want to be able to have their say rather than just leave it to MPs.
You clearly have a very strong political view on this entire issue, but you're also chairman of a significantly sized business. For business people watching this interview, what do you say about the probability of a no-deal scenario at this point by March 2019?
Well, if you just look at the government's own figures and modelling, right? This wasn't just the Treasury, this was the whole government which looked at it, and they came to the conclusion that it would be catastrophic. And we'd have these huge queues at the ports, and our ability to trade in a frictionless way would be for the birds. So the government thinks it would be close to a disaster. So it's not worth thinking about. And it's only, extraordinary ideologues that don't understand economics. But at the heart of this is a conundrum that you've got conservative ministers who are not pro-business. You've got people like Michael Gove who say, for a chairman of a FTSE 100 company today, you're more likely to be wrong. That's an extraordinary mission for a conservative cabinet member to have. You'd never hear it under Margaret Thatcher, I can tell you that.
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.